Hey, soul survivors, we're going to talk about perception, perspective, and also the triggered state. Because if you are in a narcissistic relationship, you will go through that reactive abuse where the narcissist is going to have something that is going to cause a reaction and you might lash out and be out of character, which can sometimes be abusive. And what goes on in your mind during that time, whether you're an empath or somebody struggling with mental illness or just a person who's reacting. So perspective versus perception. When you are dealing with perception, it's from who you are. Now, as we develop empathy throughout our years of experience and learning how to get along with people, we have perception that changes into perspective. So we can put things in the light of what other people are feeling. So if you can have perspective, kind of like looking from the outside in, that's when you develop empathy. And narcissists are still in that perception state where they are self-centered. So they see the world from who they are, inside out. So I'm 6'1". So my perception of who is tall and who is short is going to be different from somebody who is 5 foot tall. So somebody who's 5 foot tall can say, yeah, they were really tall. They were 5'8". And I'm going to perceive that as short because I'm referring it to myself, they're referring it to themselves. But if you put it in perspective, for them, that person's tall, and perspectively speaking, that person is short to me. So we can do that with emotions, with different things that are going on in our lives. A rich person might think macaroni and cheese for $7 is cheap, and we might think it's expensive. So as you develop empathy, you have an outside looking in to where you can see the full picture. And when you're dealing with a narcissist, they are self-centered and their perception is from who they are. So since they lie, that if you say something, they will see it as a lie or manipulative because they would do that in that situation. Or it seems something maybe you wouldn't do normally. So if you're like, yeah, I helped out with this person on the side of the road, and they're like, you never do that. What caused you to do it? And they're not going to believe you're telling the truth. And maybe it is the truth. So they're going to be like, you're being shady, you were cheating, you were this, you were that, or you're making up an excuse of why you had to stay late and you're not taking accountability. And they can make up scenarios in their head because of their perception of the situation. It's not a full perspective. They're not looking at the full picture. They often project things onto us because of the way they look at certain things. Also the way they don't want to take accountability. It's a protective measure at times. So there are different gamuts of who the narcissist is, how severe they are, what type of manipulation tactics that they use. Some can use lies a lot of times, others use flying monkeys or silent treatment, whatever it is that they do, the word salad, the confusion, the inability to answer questions. That can be extremely frustrating to where you feel like you are explaining things in every possible way. And they still pretend that they don't understand. Now, I will tell you, I know for sure that they don't always understand it because it is from their perception, not perspective, that they can't relate to it. And they also have a different way of loving. You can call it loving or using or whatever you want to call the way they love, because it is self-centered. It is for their own selfish needs. But there are times that they do things. So they love in a different way. They don't have that connection because it's centered in them as opposed to the people around them. It's not a well-rounded relationship because it's all internal to them. So when you're an empathetic person, you are going to understand to an extent what the narcissist is going through. It's hard to understand fully because they lie so much and don't open up like they should. Sometimes they do too. It gets confusing with the narcissist because they can do everything. It depends on the situation. And the longer you've been in a relationship with them, the more you're going to see a flip-flopping. But when you're in a triggered state, I have noticed this with people I talk to, that their struggles they just want to be heard. And as humans, it is a human trait to want to be heard. And I know with narcissists, where I was always like, you don't have to agree, but can you kind of comprehend what I'm saying or respond to what I'm saying? And they respond to other things or little tidbits that might have triggered them. So you're like, we've never gotten to the core of the discussion. So you start feeling like a nag because you're trying to just get that question answered. And unanswered questions kind of linger in your mind, and that starts to fester and it starts to build up, and you just want an answer to it. It should be a simple solution. But with a narcissist, you're pulling teeth and trying to extract information that it can be quite frustrating. So now you're frustrated, and just the toxicity that starts going on, where if they would have just acknowledged your question, don't have to agree with it, but kind of understand your perspective. But they're coming from their perception. And I know that there are times that they don't get it because it's foreign to them. So if we're talking about how hurt we are or confused, or the level of love that we have for them is something outside of what they feel. A lot of them have never really felt being in love. We also have to be careful. I've noticed this a lot, that this being in love a lot of times is filling voids. We finally feel like a void has been filled. And when you're with the narcissist, you start having that trauma bond, that Stockholm syndrome, where you fall in love with your abuser. It's the way that the dopamine gets hit, the way it starts causing withdrawals and a craving, and you start becoming addicted to that person because it's inconsistent, because it's not reliable, because it's confusing. So it's always on your mind, and you almost don't get relief. You get relief for a little bit with a love bombing stage. So there you go. You feel that everything can happen the way it should, but then you get breadcrumbing and it starts getting confusing again. And you try to get back to that normalcy. And the more you try, the more they take advantage of it, or they think that you're being shady, because when they do the love bombing, it's for shady reasons a lot of times, not always. Or sometimes it can be out of obligation. So you might think that they are being extra sweet. Like, my goodness, I got all this stuff for Valentine's Day. They must really love me, but they feel it's an obligation, or they're keeping up with the Joneses. So they have to show off so you can brag about them. It's really interesting. The more research I do on certain things that people post on Facebook, or certain ways that they express what the issues are in the relationships, that you start really seeing the inner workings of it. And you see a lot of lowered self-esteem, which is to be expected. Self image distortion, or comparing to other people. That being in a narcissistic relationship can kind of crush your self-esteem. And I'm here to help you guys if you're struggling with that. A lot of us, sometimes we look at the new supply and try to understand it. The narcissist will do monkey branching. If there's something that will serve them better, whether it's an escape from accountability, if you're trying to talk to them too much, but it makes sense, you were hurt or confused, that's normal to want to express your thoughts. But they come from internal needs. So if it's not one of their needs, they're not going to understand what you're saying. And, they also don't compromise. So they're not doing things that would make you feel full. If it's important for you to have your person with you at your family gatherings, but you go to their family gatherings, it starts building up resentment. And the whole relationship, since it is so one-sided, it takes time to unfold, to see all these flaws that are in it. And I just don't want you guys getting to the point where I see a lot of people have gotten to, and I've gotten there too, to where you get really depressed, and all the anxiety or feeling unheard or accepting less than. Now, I am a religious person, so some of you may have religious constraints on whether or not you should leave marriage. But if it's threatening your life, I have had a friend who has gotten shot and killed by her husband. If it gets to that point where it's that toxic, or there's drugs and alcohol or criminal behavior that can affect your life extremely detrimentally, really think about it. I don't believe my God would want me in something that is that dangerous. You know, it is a vow that you take, but I don't believe that God would want you to be brutally attacked, things like that. Share your thoughts on that. What are your thoughts on it? But perspective and perception. The narcissist doesn't have the perspective to have the empathy, and without the empathy, they don't have the deep connection. Without the deep connection, it's easy for them to leave. They move on quickly. They don't go through this heartache like we do. They might go through it for a little bit and then they move on. They give up a lot easier than we do because they don't feel that deep of a connection. Even with their kids, it's different. It's a different purpose behind it, and it comes down to the connection. Now, you can have great conversations with someone, you can enjoy time, have fuzzy warm feelings, but we have to think of what makes a good partner, or what makes a good parent, and what makes a good friend. You know, is it just self-serving to them? Are you depleting yourself, or is it a good balance? We also have to understand what people are at heart, that we don't necessarily change them, that we weed out the people that aren't supposed to be in our lives, that we accept certain things that are okay with us, might not be what we do. Maybe you're not a drinker, but they drink socially, and you can be like, okay, that's not me, but you know, they're handling it. They're not driving. They're doing everything responsible, whatever it is in the situation that you can tolerate. But when there's certain things that make you uncomfortable or don't follow your values, because we have to remember that the people that we surround ourselves, it starts wearing off on us. So there might be some stuff about us that wears off on them, but we have to remember that the things that we surround ourselves with, the types of music that we listen to, the types of movies, all these things, they can change us, or sometimes enter our dreams or our thoughts or subconscious, that we should take steps to build our subconscious to reflect the person that we feel we are. And you know, they've done all these studies on divorces. If you have friends that have been divorced, it's a higher chance that you could get divorced. Now, I'm not saying give up on your friends that are getting divorced, but people who do drugs or drink or do shady things, that every now and then it might be tempting to do certain things, or you think that you're strong enough, maybe during a time of weakness. We're not strong every day. Sometimes we have bad days. We get depressed, or maybe our bank account bounced and now we're in a desperate mode, that we have to kind of foresee what we're dabbling in. Are we dabbling in the people that uplift us? Now, once you're in a relationship with a narcissist, it's really hard. Sometimes we feel stuck. We've been financially and socially isolated, feeling helpless, like there's no hope, or sometimes we're afraid to leave, physically afraid. And when you get to that point where you're afraid to go to sleep, or you're afraid to be alone, that, you know, that's not how you're meant to live. And if things aren't getting better, if they're not willing to try, or, sometimes we have to remember that people on drugs and alcohol aren't always necessarily narcissists. But when they get in that altered state, the mind can become narcissistic. And people have impaired judgment at that time. So whether your person is a clinically diagnosable narcissist or drugs may be altering their mind, we have to look at the toxicity ratio and make some decisions. Are we meant to stay in this relationship when we're longing to get back into that relationship? Is it just to soothe our heartache? Or were they really a good person who was there for us? So a lot of us are free. A lot of us have either been discarded or gotten so fed up that we've left. That really think about it. Are we better off now? Maybe finances are harder. Maybe we're lonely because we don't have somebody to talk to, but we're not being yelled at anymore, or we're not being cut down. And there are steps to get back into life, like reconnecting with people or building new friendships. So in the triggered state, we start going into self-preservation mode as well. And when you are in a toxic relationship, when two people start getting into that state, or if the narcissist is so dead against communicating that frustrations will heighten, it will become more short-fused over the period of the duration of the relationship. People are going to start to have resentment, or they're going to feel like they're either nagging or being nagged, that there comes a time when you got to take care of that infection, that the relationship is infected, it's toxic, and two people have to want to change it. Two people have to have the emotional maturity to communicate instead of getting triggered. So it's really hard with the narcissist because they get triggered. So when you say, I love you, but it really hurts me when you do that, they're going to go off the handle. They're going to try to defend themselves. They're going to say, well, what about when you do it? So you're talking about what they were doing and what bothered you. You want to handle that, and then they can talk about things that you've done that bother them. But the issues that you need taken care of don't get taken care of because they skip over it, or they try to make you feel worse. So by the end of it, a lot of times it gets worse. And then the next day, the narcissist pretends like nothing ever even happened, or they hold a grudge against you. So narcissists sometimes do have black and white thinking, where sometimes it's a one and done. You did one thing wrong, you're done. And the hardest part about that is it's not even always something you did wrong. Sometimes it's a complete fallacy, complete falsehood, or something made up or misunderstood. So empathy is essential to having a true relationship. Now, kids are different. Kids are, that they're going to be needy, and we need to give them some grace because they are going to grow out of it, and we're trying to teach them and nurture them. And most kids do learn, but the narcissist doesn't learn. So just be aware of what you're in, and whether you stay or move on, you have to be ready to move on. Some people know that they're in a toxic relationship, but they might stay there, and it can eat away at you. But until you're ready, you're not going to make the move. And that's a choice you need to make. And if you stay in the relationship, is it healthy? Is it safe? Are they willing to work on it with you? Because you deserve to be loved. And I'm here to help you with that. Please like and subscribe, share, comment below. And if this will help anybody, please share it with them.